Muhammad Ali was completing his pilgrimage in Mecca when a stranger approached him with 5 words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. What this man told Ali about Malcolm X was so devastating, so earth-shattering, that the heavyweight champion kept it secret for 40 years. The truth only came to light after Ali's death, hidden in a sealed letter that changed everything we thought we knew about these two Islamic leaders. And what you're about to learn will make you question everything you've ever heard about one of the most famous assassinations in American history. October 1977. Muhammad Ali walked slowly around the sacred Kaaba in Mecca, his massive frame dwarfed by the spiritual magnitude of the moment. At 35 years old, the 3-time heavyweight champion had come to Islam's holiest site, seeking something more than athletic glory. His boxing career was entering its twilight, his body showing the accumulated damage of countless battles, and his soul was searching for answers to questions he'd carried for over a decade. The desert heat was oppressive as thousands of pilgrims moved in synchronized circles around the black cube that represents the center of the Islamic world. Here, dressed in the simple white garments that eliminate all distinctions of wealth or fame, Ali wasn't the most famous athlete on earth. He was just another Muslim seeking divine guidance. As he completed his 7th circuit, Ali paused near a marble column to catch his breath. The physical and emotional intensity of the pilgrimage was overwhelming, and even his legendary stamina was being tested. He found a quiet corner and sat down, lost in prayer and contemplation. That's when he noticed the man watching him, middle-aged, perhaps 40, with intelligent eyes and a carefully maintained beard. He'd been observing Ali for several minutes with obvious purpose. When their eyes met, he approached with the confident stride of someone carrying important news. "Assalamu alaikum." "Brother," the man said in accented English, "you are Muhammad Ali." "Wa alaikum assalam," Ali replied, standing respectfully. "Yes, I am. My name is Abdul Rahman Hassan. I was a close friend of Malcolm X." The mention of Malcolm's name hit Ali like a physical blow. 12 years had passed since Malcolm's assassination. 12 years since Ali had been forced to choose between his mentor and the Nation of Islam. 12 years since he'd made a choice that still visited him in nightmares. Ali's usual confidence evaporated. I knew Malcolm." "Yes," Abdul Rahman said, studying Ali's reaction with unsettling intensity. "I know you did. In fact, I've traveled from Egypt specifically to find you during your pilgrimage." "Find me? Why?" Abdul Rahman glanced around at the crowds of pilgrims, then leaned closer. "Because there are things about Malcolm's death that you need to know, things that have been hidden from you for 12 years, things that will change everything." Ali felt his heart rate spike. Something about this man's certainty, something about the weight in his voice, told him that his spiritual journey was about to take a devastating turn. "I don't understand." "Walk with me," Abdul Rahman said. "What I have to tell you cannot be said here." They left the Grand Mosque and walked through Mecca's narrow streets until they reached a small, secluded tea house. Abdul Rahman ordered for both of them, then waited until they were completely alone. The afternoon call to prayer echoed across the city, but inside their corner booth, time seemed suspended. "Muhammad," Abdul Rahman began, using Ali's Islamic name with deliberate formality, "what did the Nation of Islam tell you about why Malcolm had to die?" The question landed like a punch Ali hadn't seen coming. This was territory he'd avoided exploring for over a decade, wounds he'd never allowed to fully heal. "They said," Ali's voice caught, "they said he was a traitor, that he'd turned against Elijah Muhammad's teachings, that he'd become dangerous." "And you believe this?" "I had to believe it." The words came out as barely a whisper. "The nation was my family. When they told me Malcolm was an enemy, you turned your back on him." The accusation hung between them like a blade. Ali's eyes filled with tears he'd been holding back For 12 years. Yes, he admitted. Allah forgive me, yes. When Malcolm reached out after his pilgrimage, when he tried to explain what he'd learned about true Islam, I refused to listen. I said terrible things about him. I chose the nation over my own mentor. Abdul Rahman nodded slowly. And how has that choice felt? Like a stone in my heart that gets heavier every day. Good. Because that stone is your conscience telling you the truth. Abdul Rahman leaned forward. Muhammad, everything the nation told you about Malcolm was a lie. Ali's head snapped up. What do you mean? Malcolm wasn't killed because he betrayed the nation. He was killed because he discovered something that would have destroyed the entire organization. Something so damaging that they had no choice but to silence him. For the next hour, Abdul Rahman told Ali a story that shattered his understanding of everything he thought he knew. He explained how Malcolm had uncovered devastating secrets about Elijah Muhammad, secrets involving young women, abandoned children, and a level of hypocrisy that would have destroyed the nation's credibility forever. Malcolm tried to handle it quietly at first, Abdul Rahman explained. He hoped to address the crisis without destroying the faith of thousands. But when he realized how deep the corruption went, when he met the victims... Victims? Ali asked, his voice hollow. Young mothers, children who couldn't acknowledge their father, women who'd been told they were blessed, but were really being used. Malcolm couldn't stay silent about that. The tea house had grown quiet around them. Evening was approaching, and other patrons had left for prayers, leaving Ali alone with revelations that were rewriting his entire understanding of the past decade. So the nation killed him. They arranged for others to do it, made it look like theological disagreement, made it seem like Malcolm had betrayed Islam itself. Abdul Rahman paused, and they convinced everyone, including you, that he deserved what happened to him. Ali was crying now, his massive frame shaking with grief and rage. I betrayed my own brother when he needed me most. Yes, Abdul Rahman said without softening the blow, you did, but Malcolm forgave you. Ali looked up sharply. What? Abdul Rahman reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn notebook. He opened it carefully, as if handling something sacred. 3 days before his death, Malcolm gathered his closest friends. He knew the end was coming. The threats had become constant, protection was minimal, and the nation's campaign against him was intensifying. Abdul Rahman's voice dropped to almost a whisper. He spent that evening talking about forgiveness. What did he say? He spoke specifically about you, Muhammad. I wrote down his exact words. Abdul Rahman began to read, but Ali held up his hand. Wait, Ali said, his voice breaking. I'm not sure I can hear this. You need to hear it. Malcolm wanted you to hear it. For several minutes they sat in silence. Ali struggled with 12 years of guilt, regret, and self-hatred. Finally he nodded. Abdul Rahman read Malcolm's words, and they hit Ali with the force of divine revelation, the forgiveness, the understanding, the love that transcended betrayal. It was more than Ali's conscience could bear. When Abdul Rahman finished reading, Ali was sobbing uncontrollably. Why are you telling me this now? Ali managed to ask. Because Malcolm had one final request. He said if you ever made pilgrimage, if you ever stood before Allah seeking truth, someone should tell you that your conscience was right all along, and he asked for something else. What? Abdul Rahman handed Ali a piece of paper with an address in New York. He asked that if you ever learned the truth, you would take care of his family, not for recognition, not publicly, but because they are your responsibility now. His children? 6 children with his wife Betty. They've struggled since his death. The movement moved on. The nation certainly provides no support, and Betty has raised them largely alone. That night Ali prayed as he had never prayed before. He prostrated himself before Allah and wept for his betrayal, for his blindness, for choosing an organization over brotherhood. When he returned to America, he was a changed man, but he told no one what he had learned. The knowledge was too dangerous, too painful, and too powerful to share. Instead, Ali began what would become a 4-decade secret mission. Within months, he had quietly established a trust fund for Malcolm's children, structured through intermediaries, so no one would know the source. When Atala needed college money, a BT scholarship foundation appeared. When Ilyasa wanted graduate school, an anonymous donor stepped forward. Medical bills, housing assistance, educational expenses, help always materialized when the family needed it most. Over the decades, Ali funneled millions to Malcolm's family, never seeking recognition, never wanting acknowledgement. It was his private penance, his secret attempt to balance the scales of betrayal. He also began using his platform differently. While never explicitly criticizing the nation publicly, he started speaking about orthodox Islamic values: love, forgiveness, universal brotherhood. Those close to him noticed his rhetoric becoming less separatist, more inclusive, more aligned with Malcolm's final message. As Ali's boxing career ended and Parkinson's disease began ravaging his body, his secret campaign intensified. He established foundations echoing Malcolm's emphasis on education and human rights. He spoke at universities about true Islamic teachings. He quietly supported civil rights organizations Malcolm would have endorsed. Every year on February 21st, the anniversary of Malcolm's assassination, Ali would disappear for hours. His family assumed he was dealing with his illness. In reality, he was visiting Malcolm's grave, praying for forgiveness, and updating his fallen brother on his children's progress. In 1995, when Malcolm's daughter Ilyasa published her first book, Ali attended the launch. He sat in the back, wore sunglasses to avoid recognition, and wept as she spoke about growing up without her father, but somehow never lacking opportunities or support. Afterward, he approached her briefly. "Your father was a great man," he said simply. "I hope someday you'll understand how much he meant to those who lost their way." She smiled graciously, having no idea she was speaking to her family's anonymous benefactor. As Ali's health declined, he began preparing his final revelation. Working with his most trusted attorney, he crafted a will containing 2 extraordinary provisions: a sealed letter to Malcolm's daughter and a bequest of 30% of his estate to support Malcolm's legacy. When Muhammad Ali died on June 3, 2016, the world mourned boxing's greatest champion. But the most profound moment came days later in a lawyer's office when Ilyasa Shabazz opened the letter Ali had written for her. The letter began, "For 39 years I have carried a secret that has both tormented and guided me." When Ilyasa finished reading Ali's confession, she called a press conference. With tears streaming down her face, she revealed Ali's decades-long secret support of her family and his final admission of guilt over betraying her father. "Today I learned," she said, "that Muhammad Ali spent 40 years trying to atone for a mistake that haunted his conscience. He was a man who understood that greatness isn't about winning fights, but about taking care of each other." The truth that Ali learned in that Mecca tea house had shaped 4 decades of his life. The secret that began with 5 devastating words had led to 40 years of quiet heroism, hidden generosity, and private redemption. Because sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought in rings or on stages, but in the privacy of our own consciences. And sometimes the measure of a champion isn't how many fights they win, but how long they're willing to fight to make things right.